Good morning, everyone. We are learning Mishna Harah, Perik Beis, chapter 2, Mishna Vav, Mishna 6. I dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mr. Shalamis Rabinowitz, Shalamis Basarav Yaakov Eliezer. Just give me 1 second. Okay, sorry for the delay. If you have 5 quarters of flour, you're obligated in challah. Now, as we've said before, what this really means is that the amount of flour that you need to make a dough that will be obligated in separating challah from it is one that is made of 1 1/4 kav, or 5 1/4 kav of flour. That is the amount that is obligated. If you take that amount of flour and you were to make a dough out of it, that would have an obligation of challah. I'll just share with you here from the notes. The weight of this amount of flour in contemporary measures ranges from 3 2/3 to 5 pounds, depending on the opinion followed. There are different opinions of how to convert the measurements of the Mishna, of the Torah, to contemporary measurements, and therefore, basically, the amount is going to vary from either 3 2/3 to 5 pounds. Okay, so that's the first part of the Mishnah. Now the Mishnah continues and says that when measuring or when calculating this 5 1/4 kav, these 1 1/4 kav of flour, what goes into that exactly? So the Mishnah says, "Haim," that means the flour itself, "Usa'irban," and there's sourdough. Now sourdough is not itself edible. If you just had a big piece of sourdough, there'd be no obligation to separate challah from it because it's not edible. However, sourdough is put into a dough to help it rise, and therefore it becomes part of the dough. Now that it's part of the dough, it becomes part of the measurement of 1 1/4 kav. Okay, that's the sourdough. Now again, you're looking at a dough where you're basically saying, okay, this entire dough that I have, how much flour would be needed to make this. Now, typically it's 1 1/4 kav, but when you're going ahead and you're measuring that 1 1/4 kav, what's in that? So you're going to have you're going to include in that 1 1/4 kav the sourdough that's going to go in. V'suban u'mursanan. Suban is the fine bran, and mursanan is the coarse bran. Chameshus revayim. If it all together equals 5 quarters, chayavin, it's going to be obligated. So the bran discussed here is, again, not a bran that you would eat on its own. However, there are poor people who will leave the bran in, and therefore the bran is considered part of the dough, part of the flour, part of the dough, and therefore it's counted. So again, even though this bran is not eaten on its own, but again, sometimes it is included, it's left in the flour, and therefore since it's left in the flour, it would be considered part of the flour and part of the dough, and therefore goes into the measurement of this amount. Nital mursanan mitoichan v'chazar l'toichan. Now let's say the bran was removed from it. Okay, it was. Let's say you had these 5 quarters. It's 1 1/4 kav of the flour and the bran, etc. And you went ahead and then you removed from the flour the bran. That's nital mursanan mitoichan. The bran was removed from the flour. The chazar l'seichan, and then you put it back in. Harei elu p'turin. Then the dough will be exempt. Meaning, if in order to get your 1 1/4 kav, you're including the bran, but then you took out the bran, and now you want to put it back in to make it into 1 1/4 kav of flour in order to be chayiv and challah, it will not work. You'll be exempt. Once you take the bran out, you can't count it anymore. And that's because nobody adds this bran to their flour, to their bread. Okay? No one adds the bran to their dough. And therefore, if you took it out, you can't consider it part. If you just left it in there, there are people leaving it in there. If you leave people leaving it in there, it's considered part of it. But if the point is the bran was taken out and now you want to add it back in, so then we say people don't add the bran to it, and therefore it cannot become part of the volume that's needed for the obligation of challah. So that's why the Mishnah says, Nito mursanan mitoichen v'chazal aseichen. If the bran was taken out from them, meaning from the flour, and it was put back, harei lepeturin, then it's going to be exempt because you really don't have then anymore your 1 1/4 kav of flour of what you're making the dough out of in order to be obligated in the challah. Okay, we are now in the laws of Lashon Harah, called Test Chapter 9 from the Chavetz Chaim. And we're up to Sif Gimel, paragraph 3. Gam yesh loy la'adam lizam l'shabech es chavera b'shvach habad lidei hafsid. Again, praise wouldn't seem to be Lashon Harah, but there is possibilities of it as we have been discussing. And another example, says the Chavetz Chaim, is a person should be very careful not to praise someone in a manner that will cause him loss. A person who was a guest, he was traveling through. And he goes out to the street and he tells everybody how great this person hosted him and treated him. That could be a problem. They're unfortunate. There were certain individuals who, any chance they had, they took advantage of people. And therefore, if you just go out in public and tell people what a kind of great guy, this kind of great host this is, that could cause them damage, because then these people, these unethical people, will then just basically, have themselves go over to this guy and eat him out of the house, eat him out of everything. These things can happen. There are people out there that would do that. On this, the pasuk in Mishna, the book of Proverbs, says, "One who blesses his friend in a loud voice, early in the morning, early in the morning will be considered a curse for him." Similarly, let's say you got a loan from someone. Go telling everybody what kind of great guy this is. He lent you that money. That also could be problematic. Because then a lot of people coming up to him and begging and pressuring him to lend them money. People who, again, take advantage of these kinds of situations. They borrow money and they don't pay back, and they intentionally do that. So now if they find out that this person, you go ahead and you publicize this person lent you money. So then all these people are going to go over to the guy bar, ask him for money. He's not able to say no, because they're going to say, you lent so-and-so. So therefore, these are all examples of where a person has to be careful that even when they're praising someone, that it shouldn't turn into a vak Lashon Harah, doesn't go Lashon Harah, because you're actually causing a damage to the person. One also has to be obligated to guard his mouth, that he shouldn't be suspect about what he's saying. And people would therefore look at him as someone speaking Lashon Harah. If he's brought himself to this situation of being suspect of speaking Lashon Harah, this is included in what we call a dusting of Lashon Harah. Meaning, you said something, and it could be taken as Lashon Harah. It may not be Lashon Harah because you don't mean to say anything bad, and the problem is more in the impression that people may suspect you're speaking Lashon Hara. No, he doesn't. The Chofetz Chaim doesn't give an example of this. Right. That basically you have to be careful that people should not suspect you of speaking Lashon Hara. I don't have a good example of it, but basically have to be careful. It's your responsibility not to say things in a manner that people will think you just spoke Lashon Hara. Maybe that you didn't, but if it's something or whatever way, whatever the information is or the way you said it, it could be taken as Lashon Hara. That's avak Lashon Hara. You may not have meant to speak Lashon Hara, but if other people suspect you of speaking Lashon Hara, which means they suspect you just said something derogatory about that person, then a person has obligation not to put himself into that kind of situation, not to say things in a way that could appear or create suspicion that he is speaking Lashon Hara. Have a wonderful day.